Hi friends, this is Yogalite. Today we were looking at Kundalini. Kundalini is a causal energy that brings about transformation. Its action at the time of conception is responsible for the initial state of development you reach in life. After initial work, it goes to sleep. When awakened or increased, it can bring about rapid or gradual transformations, opening us to higher consciousness and the divine. Kundalini is the energy of evolution at the base of the spine. So there are two things. The first describes the energy and how it works. The second is the classical experience. To awaken the Kundalini is a fundamental part of many yogic systems. Systematic practices to specifically awaken the Kundalini typically involve postures, especially inversions, mudras, such as the placement of the tongue or focus for the eyes, breath patterns with retention, mantra, and visualization to direct the energy. A common goal is developing the subtle anatomy, opening chakras, and increasing the flow of energy pathways in the spine. This is accomplished by mind training, meditation, concentration, philosophy, and an emotional attitude of surrender. Some systems focus more on awakening the energy through direct or indirect methods by the teacher. Shaktipat transfers the energy through a formal process or by being in the company of a teacher and allowing your energy to emulate theirs, or the action of their energy either willed or indirectly. Then a practice is given to support this opening. When the Kundalini awakens, it moves up from the base of the spine to the crown and opens up above the head. Some systems use instead the central axis of the body. As the Kundalini ascends, it opens the chakras, awakening their actions and contents. Eventually it reaches the crown, which is the gateway to higher spiritual consciousness above the head. One meets an immensity, a vastness, an ecstasy. The sense of self dissolves. Let's separate two things. The first is the classical experiences that involve descriptions of energy rising from the base of the spine. Lights, bliss, peace, knowledge, oneness, subtle visions, and power are experienced during the ascent and at the culmination. This experience is described by many systems. It is a known spiritual experience that can occur with or without a specific technique. There are spontaneous awakenings produced by conditions rather than practice, such as extreme physical hardship or work from a past life. Different kinds of spiritual seeking can awaken Kundalini, such as Christian adepts engaged in fervent prayer. They describe Kundalini experiences in their own symbols. The descriptions vary, and there are many different phenomena, including the feelings of the energy ascending the spine with buzzing, burning, or other physical sensations. There are emotional ones, such as blissfulness, peace, and a sense of the eternal. There can be various openings in different parts of the being, producing all sorts of visions and knowledge. There can be purification experiences, such as spontaneous movements, breathing, and mantras. Some of these experiences are preparatory. The Kundalini can cause the prana to move through the system, clearing the pathways, and it is not the Kundalini energy itself. Not all experiences have physical sensations. A sudden awakening to subtle realities might not have the serpentine-like fire ascending the spine. These can happen at various levels of consciousness depending on the nature and development of the person. We can also run into the problem of overdetermination, as some experiences are more obviously the Kundalini and others may be caused by a descent of the energy from the higher consciousness, a coming forward of the soul, or openings into the subtle being, especially the emotional ranges. People can have trouble discriminating a spiritual experience from an occult one. For instance, our subliminal senses can experience subtle realities or be aware of forces influencing us that are not within the normal range of awareness. This points to the philosophical position that the Kundalini energy is active and results in these experiences. This can be a valuable idea for people who have life-changing spiritual or occult experiences outside of a systematic practice or the intent to have them. Some people experience a profound change in their sense of self, feeling the presence of the divine, true being, or even just a sense of awakening. Old psychological material can be pushed to the surface, and there is a confrontation in working out of this material. There can also be subtle realities in the forefront, and this sudden intrusion of new perceptions, such as telepathy or foreknowledge, can make one question one's sanity. These types of purifications or imbalances of the mind can also be part of the action of Kundalini. In sudden awakenings, as these experiences come through, there can be periods where the energy drops back down and the more normal consciousness returns. Some return with powers or abilities of all sorts. If you are not adequately prepared, it can be bewildering or cause a backlash as the old ego-conditioned self tries to reassert itself. When your identity changes, so does your relation to people in the world. The ego backlash will often reject any suggestions or explanations, including intuitive knowledge. It often stands on the point that nothing recaptures the experience, so it is false. This can be vehemently cynical and painful in its constriction. This is an attitude that has to be overcome. The essential thing is that the end result, given time, will be spiritual growth and realization. This is why some traditions place a high value on the idea of purification and have a systematic preparation before using a technique to awaken the Kundalini. The purification has 3 elements. One is to try to remove old habits and attachments. The other aims to establish a foundation to use progress and set a clear goal. The third is energetic purification. All 3 interact. This way, when experiences come, one has the tools to deal with them and doesn't get trapped in the many pitfalls of a changing sense of self. These experiences can be described with other models and not attributed to Kundalini if the sense of the ascent of the energy or consciousness is not present. We will look at this later. A distinction can be made between powerful awakenings and slow, gradual awakenings. A gradual awakening slowly increases the flow of energy. Chakras open and things emerge as progress is made. More happiness and insight, quietness, personal values change, and reactions become positive and align with the greater truth. Experiences can come, but there is less struggle and a sense of gradual development. The awareness increases. A slow preparation gives way and allows for more dynamic action of the Kundalini. The higher states are visited with lasting, transforming results. A given practice may result or aim for one or the other, slow or fast. Kundalini can be looked at as the source of any kind of spiritual growth. It is a latent spiritual power at the base of the spine that is awakened through practice. We will look at where it comes from when we examine the original energy. The Kundalini is the power of spiritual evolution. The action of the energy establishes your life potential at the time of your conception. 3 main aspects shape your incarnation. The first is the world conditions you are born into. The second is your karma, the past actions you bring with you. And the third is the soul mission, or evolutionary path, the purpose of your incarnation. Kundalini energy forms your potential, organizing your possibilities. It is active at the time of conception. It does its work and then goes dormant with only a small thread of active energy that allows you to be alive. If we look at DNA, we can say that it determines our physical nature, but Kundalini energy is a much broader concept. When a fetus is conceived, Kundalini energy is active, developing possibilities on the subtle planes. It determines the constitution of your subtle body, how open your chakras are, what karmic seeds exist, and what your connection to subtle awareness will be. It determines to some extent what experiences you are likely to have. The aspect of the soul that comes to inhabit the new birth has influence. This aspect of the soul moves from lifetime to lifetime, working to achieve realization. It carries your development forward even as old details and ways of being in the previous life dissolve as you die and move on. Depending on your development, either the world conditions, your karma, or your soul mission may be more influential in your life. The soul may be buried deep. The world conditions may not be conducive to growth, or your karmic momentum is resisting your opportunities for spiritual growth. Hence the value of practice and traditions. For the moment, we can simplify realization by using 3 approaches. One is working to realize a transcendent eternal beyond where we dissolve without identity in a peaceful static, the timeless, actionless of an eternal infinite. Or 2, one is working to realize a relationship with the divine, which includes the transcendent, but also the one being that creates and informs all in unity. Or 3 is aiming to be an expression of that same transcendent, informing being as a ray of the sun acting from oneness in individual form. Note that a given approach to what we conceive as the ultimate may be what is needed in a given life. The soul's needs and developments determine your awareness of, the usefulness, and even the ability to encounter a given teaching. Assume you have spent countless past lives in many religions and spiritual pursuits, and what is essential is not a teaching or belief, but your connection to the ultimate being. Through lifetimes, one evolves, becoming more able to direct the flow of events and master the conditions of the world. To this end, one has momentum. Previous lives and work have a part to play in the present life and shape future possibilities. When you complete your second year at school, you don't jump to your 8th year, you go to your 3rd year. Your progress is built on what comes before. The karma that you bring is selected from your storehouse of previous experiences. It helps set in motion experiences to help you continue to grow. If you fail at something, it can return to give you the conditions to master it. If you were successful, you might revisit it again as a way of opening to other possibilities. Some things may be left behind. You can break with the momentum of the last life, and the next life takes a very different direction to explore new possibilities. For instance, if you spent a lifetime as a musician, this may have been very valuable for your growth, learning to express emotions and thoughts through music, recognition of beauty, a creative process utilizing and essentializing sense experiences, communicating with others to induce feelings, consciousness developed through hands and breath. Many things are possible to learn. In a future life, you continue this development and you are born into a situation that allows you to return to this endeavor, or perhaps it is hampered, but you are drawn to it and have the will to pursue it despite the resistance and lack of support in the world. It is the growth that is brought forward, propensities, but not the details of name and form, not the routines and social connections, not memories. Occasionally, at peak moments of growth, when the soul emerges, some part of the past life may be preserved as memory. These are often simple images that link to a realization milestone. When dealing with karma, it is not so much the details of the previous event as it deals with the underlying truth of being and the forms it can take. For example, there are many forms of romantic relationships portrayed in novels, theater, and movies by countless characters and settings subjected to the taste, mores, and themes of their time. Karma, momentum, can also be looked at in terms of the koshas, and you have a physical karma, emotional karma, and mental karma. So, for instance, you may have spent lifetimes perfecting your body, and then later you use this not to evolve physically, but as a way of being successful as an athlete and being forced to confront fame and wealth. These layers all interact. The soul determines what needs to be worked through, and the Kundalini energy establishes these potentials in the subtle body. It plants the karmic seeds. In addition to the soul's agenda, one has to deal with the world conditions. For instance, your opportunities for spiritual growth may be quite different if you were born as a woman in Afghanistan as opposed to one born in Belgium. At the time of reincarnation, the soul finds an opening. This opening may be one prepared long in advance. Your level of development is at play. As the more evolved you are, the more you have the ability and awareness to choose and influence the conditions you are born into. The world conditions may support or thwart your soul's mission. For instance, you are born in a time and place that supports your growth, but an earthquake leads to a premature death. Your soul will reincarnate in order to try again. Advanced beings have a more universalized consciousness and are more in touch with global evolution. It is easier for them to utilize even natural events for their mission. The world is also evolving as you are, not just an individual nature, but also a universal nature. This is different from the view in some traditions that hold karma is simply a balance mechanism or a moral scorecard. So a natural disaster is wrought upon people because they have been naughty in a previous life. Or the idea that willy-nilly, our old friend, can bot between fish and banker and ant and hairdresser depending on their good or bad deeds. It could be that a soul chose to incarnate to experience a natural disaster, or it could be they were unaware, or it could be on a subtle level they know it is coming before birth and manage to be elsewhere when it happens. All of these are possible depending on the nature of conditions, the level of development of the soul, and the karmic direction. The three, soul mission, karma, and world conditions interact. The general movement is towards growth, the purpose of the incarnation. It is a complex interaction that resists mechanistic explanations, and the truer insight can come only with the awareness of the soul. The more you work towards evolution, the more the higher consciousness descends to aid you through involution, grace. Hence the idea of surrender and working to remove the separation caused by ego and ignorance. In this view, karmic seeds reside in the chakras. The energy can awaken these seeds, and they manifest. Karmic seeds ripen when the conditions are right, but they also have the power to create the conditions, depending on the strength of the seed and the receptivity of the conditions. This works similarly to the idea of manifesting something, where you focus on a desired outcome and come to create conditions. There are many forces at play as to what can be achieved. In manifesting, this often works because the greater subliminal consciousness senses an opening and the possibility, or even has foreknowledge of what will come, rather than simple wish fulfillment or desire-based magic. Action within the play of forces in life is also part of the process. When the Kundalini is active and continues the work of development, it can burn away karma, as one evolves more directly by a realization of the higher consciousness. Just like you can struggle with a physical ailment, suffer with symptoms, and then when properly diagnosed and given treatment, the disease is cured. The symptoms and the struggle fall away. You can have all sorts of life directions, what you think is important, old memories and emotional patterns that suddenly disappear or lose their hold on you as the Kundalini brings a truer way of being. This is why it is a causal energy. This is also why your worldview and values can be completely transformed by an experience of bliss, love, peace, or deep compassion. You can achieve what would have taken lifetimes in an instant by the touch of the divine. We can mark a shift between the surface nature of the being and the inward nature of the being. You can go beyond the momentum of your conditions. This can be described as a deeper awakening or a deeper connection to the soul or spirit above, brought about by the action of the Kundalini. At its most powerful, you will lift up above the head and direct the life from the higher consciousness. This is also how teachers can awaken the Kundalini or transform you. With any teacher, we can look at two things. The first is the teaching, what they would have you do, for instance, meditation. The second aspect is their connection to the divine. What you are trying to do is to emulate that connection. Some teachers have a formal method of transforming energy to awaken the Kundalini. Shaktipat may involve rituals, mantras, and energy manipulations. Other teachers have a connection, and you open into that connection and your energy resonates and flows with theirs. You bask in their light. Others identify themselves in you. They recognize the divine within themselves and are able to recognize it within you so that you also touch it. They can awaken a realization in you as you already have this perfection. At the basis of being, it is all the one. This can also be looked at from the point of view of the inner being, which we will look at later as a descending of the Adi Shakti, or the emergence of the deeper consciousness, or the soul coming to the surface. When you die, there is a summing moment for the soul. What has been achieved is noted, and what needs to be done is brought forward. Some experience past life reviews and near-death experience as part of this process. The soul sets its future direction. The soul in the incarnation can come to the surface. People can be quite sincere near death. You can have terminal lucidity or a measure of control of the death process. Some people will live long enough to accomplish what is important to them, such as the birth of a grandchild or the visit of a relative. They will say what needs to be said. More awakened souls may be able to see aspects and predict the next incarnation. Liberated souls may return to aid the evolution of the world rather than still be working out the growth linked to karma. There are practices in Tibetan Buddhism that seek to control the death process, but also can involve using the Kundalini for controlling reincarnation. Kundalini is not opened by a mechanical process. There is always a higher consciousness involved. It is up to the divine grace. The initial action is from above. Sometimes this is felt as energy descending, and then the Kundalini awakens and comes up. Some practices for awakening the Kundalini involve sending down energy to strike it at the base of the spine. This is also why surrendering and a turning towards the divine is essential. At the time of conception, there is an increase in the action of Kundalini, a merging of the parents via the sex act. This is the basis for some tantric practices. Essentially, Kundalini is a causal energy. It creates and determines the forms and flow. In the next part, we will look at its origin and the symbolism associated with it. We will also look at the inner being in part 4, the aim of surrender with physical practices. If you got something out of this video, please hit the like and subscribe. Till next time.